Hello, and thank you for joining me, Shanny Leigh, for this Yin-spiration yoga flow to welcome in the new year. It is one of a two-part practice series based on the principle of yin and yang, or yin and yang. The yang is the fiery flow, the power yoga flow featured in the other video, and this will be more of the yin-inspired flow, the rest and digest, calmer, stretching it out. And the idea behind these two videos is to come into the new year a little more balanced. So balancing yin and yang, balancing a time for action and energy and a time for rest and recovery. And so we'll be working on stretching out mostly the lower body, working a little bit in the core to work on and stretch the muscles involved primarily in balance. So I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you on the mat. So we'll get started with our pranayama, our breathing exercise. You can be in Vajrasana on your knees, or you can be in Sukhasana, easy seat. And so I invite you to settle here somewhere on your mat and close your eyes. And we'll take a few breaths to start to come to the body. Sitting up nice and tall. Maybe your chin is slightly tucked. Nice long line from your tailbone through your spine to the crown of your head. Hands maybe resting on your knees for a few more rounds of breath. And begin practice with one half of Nadi Shodhana. To practice balance, we'll be breathing in through one side of our nostril and then the other at the end. So you can take whatever fingers you like. I kind of like to take a modified hang loose sign and use my thumb and my ring finger. And so I invite you to find that and place your thumb on the right side of your nostril, and either use your pinky or your other finger to gently touch your cheekbone on the other side. So plugging the right nostril, I invite you to start to breathe in just through the left. Balancing out the right and left side energies. Noticing any difference you may feel in just breathing through one side. Plugging the right, breathing through the left. One more round here. And slowly release. Make any observations. Let your nose come back to normal. Exhale through the mouth. And gently begin to flutter your eyes open, and we'll begin in child's pose, Balasana. So coming onto your knees, and I invite you to have your knees wide here, or as wide as is comfortable, sitting your hips back. Begin to stretch your torso out, dropping your forehead to the mat. Still coming to the breath, maybe your eyes are closed again here. If it's part of your practice to set an intention, you can. And we'll take a few more rounds of breath here. So today isn't exactly a yin class, but what I like to call yin-spiration. It's a slower flow, working on deeper stretches. And so in actual yin yoga, you hold a pose maybe for 3 to 5 minutes. On a shorter end, 90 seconds, so a minute and a half. We'll just be holding poses for a little bit longer. So a nice slow yin-spiration flow here to stretch out the lower body. So let's take 3 more rounds of breath here. Trying to sync with each exhale. Trying to release. Let's do one more round of breath.
And then slowly moving towards a rising cobra, begin to lift your hips, adjust your knees if needed so that you can shift your weight forward and then drop your hips towards the mat. Shine your chest. Take a breath here. And we'll be slowly moving back to child's pose, inviting a little bit of a flow. Exhale, draw it back, your knees are closer. Maybe don't sit all the way down. And then inhale slowly. Make your way back to cobra. And then make your way back to child's pose, balasana. And then come back through cobra pose and settle here. Rolling the shoulders up, back, and down. Adjusting as needed. Pressing in the tops of your feet. And if there's any pressure in your low back, you can always come down to low cobra and decrease the stretch a little bit. Otherwise, actively push through your hands. Maybe you gaze up or take some neck movements. Take another round of breath here. And either stay or maybe you gaze over your right shoulder. Just getting into the hip flexors. One more round of breath. If you're twisting, and then take it to the other side. Otherwise, just stay right where you're at. One more round of breath. If you're twisting, come back through center, and then we'll all take one more round of breath here. And then we'll slowly take it back. Exhale to child's pose. Nice and slow here. Release the stretch. Shift your hips back. Take a round of breath. Exhale, side out. Ground down. In your hands, all 10 fingers. Slowly begin to lift your hips up again towards a tabletop. Adjust your knees still if they're not at hip distance yet. Tuck your toes, and we'll slowly lift into downward facing dog a few times. Just getting into a flow here. On the exhale, begin to lift your hips as you shift them back in the air, ears falling by your biceps. And then we'll bring it back down, tabletop. And then just move back and forth through this. So the inhale brings you down, and the exhale brings you up. At your own rhythm, at your own pace, just nice and slow. Keeping the knees bent slightly. Try not to hyperextend anything. Let's take one more round of breath. And then settle in. Downward facing dog. Adho Mukha Svanasana. On an exhale to lift your hips. Shift them back. And then maybe begin to walk your dog. Pedaling one heel towards the mat as you deeply bend the other knee. And then switching it up. Trying to stay grounded in all 10 fingers. If you have any wrist pain, you can put a towel or fold your mat up underneath the heel of your hand, and that'll help. Nice and slow, nice big stretch. So working into the calves, I'm sure you feel it. Right, the calves are important in our balance. Really the whole lower body, core down. If anything's tight, it could throw your balance off. And you can also just find stillness if you want. We'll be here. 2 more rounds of breath. 1 more round of breath. Trying to let something go mentally or physically. And then we'll take it slowly back to our tabletop. Begin to shift your weight, drop your knees back down, and find tabletop pose, Barmanasana. Hands underneath your shoulders, knees underneath your hips. Maybe you take a moment here to sway something out. 1 more round of breath, and then we'll give our hands a little break, I promise. And then exhale, sit your hips back, coming into Vajrasana Thunderbolt pose. torso is nice and tall. If this doesn't serve you, you can find an easy, just a cross-legged seat, although we are trying to stretch out the quads here. So maybe this is enough for you, already feeling it. If you want to increase this, you can begin to lean back, hands come behind, fingers point towards you, and maybe you start to walk your way back, stretching everything out, trying to keep the knees on the mat. And you can stay here. If it's available to you, you can come on to your elbows. Again, trying to keep the knees on the mat. You can also lie all the way down. But if you find that your knees start to come up, just come out of it a little bit. Taking now a few moments here. Nice stretching into the quads. If your neck hurts when you release it back, tuck your chin in. Let's just do one more round of breath here. And then wherever you're at, slowly begin to come out of it back into hero's pose. We'll all meet sitting back on our knees. And then rising high up onto our knees, inhale, arms lift up into the sky, big stretch. And exhale, take it to tabletop again. Hands come beneath your shoulders, knees beneath your hips. Again, maybe sway something out, let the back be neutral for a second, especially if you're doing the bend backwards. You might feel it a little bit. One more round of breath. And then sigh it out, and we'll activate the core a little bit here, since that's also involved in balance. Left knee stays on the mat. Inhale, right leg goes back. Hold here just for a second. Nice flat back. And then draw the knee in 3 times. Exhale, draw your knee in, and extend it back out. Inhale. Exhale, draw your knee in, and extend. Last time, draw it in, and then step your foot all the way through to come into a low lunge. So now here you can take your back knee back farther, your front knee and foot up wider in front, and then rise up. Inhale, arms reach into the sky. And now you can keep them up here if you want a little more work in the shoulders. You can bring them simply back down onto your front knee like you're taking an awkward school sport photo shoot. And this is where we'll stay for a few rounds of breath. Trying to sink into it. So again, maybe you are further stacked up, or maybe you're really dipping in. It just depends on where your body is at in this moment. As long as you are feeling a nice stretch, that is the most important. And you can play around with this if you like to move. If you don't like to stay still, you can try dipping your chest further forward or pulling it back. Just try not to arch too much in the low back. The idea is to sink the hips down. And with Yin Yoga, on the breath, try to use the breath to release. So when you breathe in, you'll feel that expansion of air inside your body press against the muscles that are being stretched. And then when you exhale, you'll feel a gentle release. It might be very small. Using the breath to tell the body that the deep stretch is okay here. And if at any point there's any pain, just come out of it. Bring yourself back a little bit and readjust. All right, there's no judgment here. It's just working with your body. Let's do one more round of breath. See if you can't just sink a little bit deeper. And then slowly let your hands come back to the mat. Maybe shift your hips back a little bit to release the left hamstring. And then settle back into your runner's lunge. And now place your left hand on the mat inside of the right foot. And then inhale. Right arm opens up. Find a nice stretch. One more round of breath here. And then if you want to find a bind, I invite you to tuck your back toes and bring your foot into the air so that you can grab it with your right hand. This is also a great quad stretch. if that earlier quad stretch wasn't working for you. If this isn't available to you, you can use a yoga strap, you can use a towel to pull your foot through, or closer to you, you can use a TheraBand. And if you find that your shoulder, your left one is rotating inward, I say that because I just felt it, turn your left hand out a little bit like you're opening a jar, and that'll help keep your shoulder a little bit more open. Maybe this is a time when you can think of your New Year's intention if your mind is wandering. Let's just do one more round of breath. And then gently release your foot, right arm sweeps back up. And exhale, take it to the mat. Find your runner's lunge. One more round of breath here, shine your chest forward. And now fully shift your hips back, coming up onto your front heel into a half split, Ardha Hanumanasana. Half Lord of the Monkeys pose. Bow here. If you like to add movement, you can rise with the inhale and fold with the exhale, or you can just fold and hold. And then this is a good one that I feel, at least on each exhale, I kind of feel like I can sink a little bit deeper. So I normally am not the biggest fan personally, if you can tell by my other videos, are mostly vinyasa. I like a quick, fast power yoga. But I think the competitive nature in me still really likes yin yoga because that's that, oh, can I sink lower? Yeah, I can sink lower. Maybe you're just like, nope, this is perfect. I like the slow stretch, right? That's why there's so many styles of yoga, which is great. There's something for everyone. Be here a few more rounds of breath. You can also stretch out if you're more sore in the top part of your foot. You can have your foot flat on the mat, and that'll stretch more out, the top part out more. And you can really increase this, although it shifts where the stretch is in your leg, by sitting all the way back and then stretching forward. But if you do that, try to make sure you're still feeling something in the calf and not in only the hamstring. Let's take 3 more rounds of breath wherever you're at. This is also great, not just for balance, but sitting all day in a car in front of our computers. Last round of breath here. And then slowly release, walk it back, and take your knee back to tabletop pose. Adjust as needed. Maybe sway it out. And then we'll do that all on the other side. As you're ready, ground down in the right knee, and then inhale, left leg goes long. Find a hold. Activating the core, since the core is integral in our balance. Still grounding down in your fingertips, not just in the heels of your hands. One more round of breath, and then we'll draw it in 3 times. Exhale, draw it in. And stretch it out. Draw it in. And inhale. Exhale, tuck, 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 and step your foot all the way through. And now again, maybe you're right here and you rise up on an inhale. Stay nice and stacked, shoulders over your hips. Or if you want to increase that, either shift your back knee back or your front heel forward and sink a little lower. Options if you want a more power type of yoga, or at least a little more power burn, you can keep your arms up and get a nice little shoulder burn. Or come back to your awkward photo shoot, sport photo shoot. And we'll hold here, sinking into it. Few rounds of breath. So a full yin class would have in about an hour, maybe somewhere between 10 and 15 poses, and you hold each for a long period of time. And the purpose of it is for that deep stretch. So if you are stretching, that's great, but you have to stretch something for at least about a 30-second hold for it to actually improve flexibility. So if you're just kind of doing, oh, that feels good, couple seconds, okay, come out of it, that's great for recovery. Certainly please stretch at least some time during the day, but if you're working on improved flexibility, yin yoga is great for that. Exhale, continue to release. And it's also stretching out what's called the myofascia, which is kind of like this interconnective web everywhere in the body. That's also right in the body, like everything else, a little bit elastic. And at any point if something hurts, come out of it, ease out of it. The point is not pain. The point of yoga is never pain. Yin yoga is about finding that limit where you're like, okay, I really need to breathe into this. And then using your breath to tell your body about that limit's okay, right? We often hurt ourselves when we're tense and we push something that we shouldn't. But slowing down tells the body to get out of the fight or flight. Let's do one more round of breath here. And then if you want to add a flow, your hands can come up on a breath. Otherwise, just bring them down to the mat on an exhale. Slowly release. Slow is the name of the game here. Shift the hips back just a bit to release that hip flexor. Ooh, feeling that. And then slowly come back to your runner's lunge. As you're ready, shine your chest forward on an inhale. Right hand stays on the mat this time. And now left arm stretches up into the sky, getting a little bit into the chest and the shoulders. One more round of breath. And then again, make sure you're trying to imagine that you're turning or opening a cap with your hands so your shoulder isn't turning in. And then maybe you lift your back foot and find a nice little grab. Remember to smile and breathe. Adjust as needed. Feeling this in the quad. Maybe you close your eyes, maybe they're open. Right, yin isn't so focused on posture, like hatha and vinyasa are very much, tuck your tailbone, do X, Y, Z. It's more about how it feels in your body. Just continue to ease your body, continue to sink. And maybe you feel that you are sinking and your body's releasing and you need to adjust. That's okay. You can kind of shift out of it, adjust, come back into it. One more round of breath here. Slowly release your foot, stretch your arm back up. Exhale, take both hands to the mat, frame your foot, shine your chest forward, and then we'll take it back to our half splits, walking the hands back as you shift your hips back and lift your front toes, coming into Ardha Hanumanasana half splits. So again, maybe you just fold right here if you don't mind the stillness. And you like to add movement on an inhale, you can lift and try to straighten the spine, and then fold on an exhale. Just to add a little more movement. And breathe. This is a great one for me to see if I can't sink and release just a little bit more with each exhale. And again, options. If you want to stretch out more of the top part of your leg, let's say you're a runner and your shins are pretty sore, you can have your foot flat on the mat. Keep your knee not hyperextended, and you'll stretch a little more out in the top that way. Or if you want to kind of get more of a hamstring stretch, you can sit your hips down. But we will be stretching out the hamstrings, so this is trying to focus on the calf. So if you do that and then suddenly feel it more in the upper part of the leg than the calf, I encourage you to not rush the stretch. We will get to it. Continuing to sink. Do one more round of breath here. And then slowly release, come out of it, hands come back to the mat, and we'll take it back to tabletop. Knees come back together. And take a second here. One more round of breath. And then we'll meet in downward facing dog. Tuck the toes, and you can take a few rounds of breath to get there, or just on an exhale, lift straight up and settle in. Maybe you want to walk it out a little bit, and maybe notice here if anything feels different in the lower body. Maybe your calves do feel a little more stretched out, a little more loose and limber. Just take one more round of breath. Exhale, side out. And then begin to walk your hands nice and slow back to your feet, keeping a slight bend in the knees until you find your way to a forward fold. Release the neck, release the head, and hang. Maybe your hands stay on the mat, or maybe you cross your hands and your elbows. Now here, keep your knees slightly bent unless it's available to you to straighten them out. But try not to hyperextend. I used to hyperextend because I thought that was a better stretch, but try to keep a slight bounce in your knees so they're not locked out. Releasing the hamstrings. Maybe you sway around. And if you do want to get into the neck, you can interlace your fingers and bring them to the nape of your neck to pull your head down. Otherwise, just hang out. So while you're hanging out here, maybe just look up where you can kind of see the video. I'll give you 3 options. You can either do yogi squat, so just keep hanging in forward fold, which is when your toes are at heels in and you squat it all the way down. If this doesn't work in your body, you can also take a seat and have your legs in a V and fold forward. Kind of also gets in the inner thighs. And if that doesn't really serve you, you can have a wide-legged forward fold. This doesn't get in the inner thighs as much unless you add a side lunge, which you can flow between, or you can just hang out and continue to get into the hamstrings. So 3 options. I'm going to do a yogi squat right where I'm at. Otherwise, sit it down. Open your legs in a V, fold forward, or stay standing, legs in a V, and fold forward, depending on what you want to stretch out today. Take a moment there, and we'll stay here for a few rounds of breath, about a minute to a minute and a half in these poses. If you are in Malasana, yogi squat here, garland pose, try to have a nice tall spine. Hands are at prayer so that your elbows can help push your knees out. If you're in wide-legged forward fold, you can just be dumping over it, which is when you're seated, right? If you're seated, you can just dump, or you can try to have a flat back and walk out. And in wide-legged forward fold standing, you can have your hands bound behind your back and overhead if you want to get into the shoulders. You can flow back and forth between a side lunge if you want to get this inner groin stretch is what we're going for. Lots of options. If again you're a runner and your feet are tired, you can turn your toes in if you're standing in a V. You can turn your toes in slightly and your heels out, and that gets into the outer part. You can even have a bind in Malasana if you're like, you know what, I'm not a Yin-spiration fan. I like the faster yoga. You can add challenges in a lot of different ways. Just take a few more rounds of breath here. Again, sinking as able. Remembering to smile.
Remembering your intention, if you someone for this practice or for your new year. If you're watching this at New Year's, you can really watch it at any time if you want to stretch out the lower body. Let's take one more round of breath here. Exhale, sigh it out. And then slowly we'll make our way back to either downward facing dog if you're in any position. If you are in malasana, you want to come to a forward fold first. You could just stretch it out, gentle release. If you're seated, coming back onto your hands and knees maybe, and then into downward facing dog if you're in wide leg forward fold. Just doing what you need to slowly meet us back in Adho Mukha Svanasana. Let's just take one more round of breath here and then stay grounded in the left foot. And on the inhale, right leg goes high and open the knee. Or I should say the hip by bending the knee. Get into the hip, three-legged dog. If this doesn't work for you, you can always option be on your knee and opening up your hip. It's a little more muscle work, but you're still getting a stretch. Take one round of breath. And then we'll do knee to the back of our right elbow 3 times. Slowly exhale, tap right behind your elbow, and open it back up to scorpion. Inhale, activating the core just a little bit. That's why I said yin-spiration. There is some work. Exhale, tap, and now swing your your foot off to the left and drop your knee and shift it back to come into pigeon pose. If this works for you, stay right here. Otherwise, come to a seat. If that doesn't feel good, left foot on the mat, left knee bent. Cross your right ankle over your left knee. And if that is not helping on your hands, you can do this on your back. So pick your medicine and we'll all settle into our version of pigeon pose. If you are in pigeon, stay up high here just for one more round of breath. And then fold your chest over if you are in the stomach facing the mat expression of the pose. And we'll settle here. Again, easing into it gently. Using the breath to let something go, even if it's just physically. Maybe as your body starts to release, you feel, maybe you're already chest folded completely on the mat. Maybe you're still up on your elbows like I am. But with each release, I can kind of begin to adjust lower and lower. I can even stack my hands to make a little pillow. So if you were watching the video, you'll notice that I started up here in the pose. And now as I've released, I'm folded forward. That's what we're going for. Just a gentle, gradual progression. So yours might be higher up, and then maybe eventually you get to your elbows, right? It's not a competition. It's not a race. If you're seated, maybe you walk your hands in, pushing your chest closer to your folded legs. That's another way to increase the stretch gradually. Let's take one more round of breath here. Even though this is one of my favorite poses in yoga, it's such a great release for me. And then slowly, if you're on your stomach, walk your hands back in. And I'll do this first, and then for the seated people, I'll show you. Begin to bend your back knee so that you can lift your foot. And now you can grab your foot with either hand, either your left
or your right to find that quad stretch. So if you were in a seat, I invite you to come back into the lunge with your right foot out front and grabbing your back foot and inviting a quad stretch again. So same muscle, just a different position with the front leg. And we'll be here for a few rounds of breath. So you can be twisted. This is one I really need to breathe into. So one of the things that's hard for me to let go of in yoga is, even though I am a yoga instructor and I am relatively flexible, I can't do yet, or maybe never, certain poses, right? Like the full pigeon pose when people are grabbing their foot. And part of me is always like, oh, I'm a yoga instructor, I should be able to do these poses, right? But that's what we're trying to let go of, is all those shoulds, coulds, woulds. And if you notice, I was grabbing my foot with my right hand, now I'm grabbing with my left. It just feels a little bit better, right? So that's also what yoga is about, finding what feels better to you in this moment. This one is also great to use a strap or a towel if it doesn't reach. Let's take one more round of breath here. And then release. And we'll make our way back into downward facing dog. Slowly lift it up. Stretch it back. Release. Let's take one more round of breath, and then we'll do that on the other side. Right foot on the mat, left leg lifts and opens into your scorpion. Three-legged dog. Let's do one more round of breath here. And then knee to back of left elbow 3 times. Exhale, touch, and open up again. And touch, and open up, and touch. And now again, maybe you swing your foot off towards the right, set your shin down, and shimmy your way into your pigeon pose. Maybe you come to a seat, maybe you come onto your back. Stay up tall here just for a second, because it is a different stretch. And then begin to fold. Or you can, if you're in a seat, begin to push your chest closer to your legs until you feel that limit. And then you breathe into that limit. And this is a great one where you notice if one side's different than the other. Maybe that does mean you need to stretch out one side more than the other, or work one side more than the other. Maybe it's a little weaker. It also just might be your anatomy. I think a lot of people think yoga is just, oh, you're just still and you hold it and you don't fidget. I fidget a lot, so. Again, maybe about a minute more here. If you're on your back, obviously, you can just slowly pull your leg closer and closer into you. Feeling the release. Let's do 3 more rounds of breath here. And then as you are ready, If you're on your seat or a back, if you're on your back, come to a seat, come to lunge. If you're on your back, come to lunge. Otherwise, if you're forward facing, walk your hands in, tuck your back toes, bend your back knee, lift your back foot into the air and find your bind. And just smile, breathe. All right, I'm a little twisted here. You can be facing front and just pulling back, whatever works in your body. If you can do the full pigeon, by all means, do the full pigeon. And breathe into this, right? So either you're in a lunge, a runner's lunge, finding that quad bind again. Let's just do a couple more rounds of breath here. Still staying focused with our breath. Few more rounds. And then gently release. And wherever you are at, come to a seat. And swing your legs around, bringing them out nice and straight in front of you. Take a second, maybe massage it out. And then inhale, arms sweep up and we'll fold forward, really getting into hamstrings again. Exhale, Paschimottanasana. Seated forward fold. Now, options here. If your hands don't reach your toes, or that's a lot of pressure, you can take fists and stack them underneath your knees and fold. That kind of helps reduce some of the pressure and if you happen to lock your knees out a lot. Otherwise, you can bend your knees and find your toes that way and slowly inch them out is a great way. Or you can try to have a flat back and pull yourself in like you're hinging. So a few options here for a few more rounds of breath. Let's do one more round of breath here. And then slowly release whatever you have. And begin to bend your right knee, bringing the sole of your right foot into the inside of your left leg. Sit up nice and tall again. Inhale and Janu Shirsasana, now fold. So now we're really getting into one leg. Again, maybe you stack your right fist underneath your knee. You can also use a towel or a pillow or a blanket. This is another great one where I feel the gentle release. You can even kind of tuck your ankle under and push your feet forward, especially if you're a runner or you did some hiking and the top part of your foot is tight. You can do that, or you can pull your toes back. Let's do one more round of breath here. And then slowly release. Bring your right knee in. Cross your right foot over your left knee. Right hand goes back. Inhale, arm reaches up the left one and then crosses to the outside of your right knee, finding a twist here. And so even though you feel this in the upper body, try to feel it in the lower body as well. This will be a little quicker one. Just one more round of breath. And then exhale, release. Bring the right leg straight. We'll take this to the other side. Bring the left foot into the inside of the right leg, sitting up nice and tall. Arms reach up. Breathe in and fold. Breathe out. Janushirasana, hand to big toe pose. And breathe. And this is our last seated pose before we come on to our back. And you can have a flat back and kind of fold forward with a hinge. You can just dump into it. Let's do one more round of breath here. And then slowly roll the torso up. Cross the left foot over the right. Left hand goes back. Inhale, right arm reaches and outside of your elbow to the outside of your knee. Looking over your left shoulder. And yes, you'll feel this obviously in the upper back, but also try to feel it in the legs. Let's do 2 more rounds of breath here, a little quicker on this one. Last round of breath. And then slowly unwind, and everyone's favorite part will be coming on to our backs. If you need to adjust on your mat, you can. Coming on to your back, find your way there, and then let your legs come straight up into the air. Hands can be by your side, on your stomach. This is great to do at night against a wall, and you can have your legs in a V or whatever you want. You can even put like a sandbag on your feet. We'll just do 1 more round of breath. And then I invite you to cross your right knee over your left. And then move your calf out of the way, bend both knees, and either grab your knees, your shins, or right above your ankles, and pull your knees into your chest, getting into the hips. In the leg portion, at least, of reclined Gomukhasana cow-faced pose. So now you can stay here if you're really feeling this stretch. And what we're gonna do is a nice reclined quad stretch. It's a little confusing cue-wise, but bring your right hand down to your left foot, and then slowly let your right leg go back to be straight. So your left leg is still underneath or behind your right leg. Now begin to drop your left knee down and out towards the mat. And now your right leg can stay straight. It can bend and come back to the mat. That's the least intense version of the stretch. Or I like to bend my knee and using my left hand, draw my knee toward my chest. So you're holding your right knee in towards your chest. Right hand is grabbing your left foot as the outside of your left leg is on the mat. Knee pointing down and out. This is a really good quad stretch. Hopefully you're feeling it. If you want, you can even give yourself a little foot massage. And take a few more rounds of breath here. Do one more round of breath. And then you can either stay here if you want to find a supine twist with this. You can keep this, otherwise just bring your knees back together and drop your knees off to the left, or keeping the bind of your left leg, let your left hand come to the outside of your right knee as you draw your right knee over towards the left in cat-tail pose. Finding a nice little supine twist here. Or you just have both knees stacked and you're twisting. One more round of breath. And then slowly bring it back. Release the left foot. Let both legs come straight back into the air. And we'll do that on the other side. Now crossing the left knee over the right, bending both and either grabbing your knees, your shins, or your ankles to find cow-faced legs on the other side. And hold here. Reconnecting with your breath and your intention. Few more rounds. Let's do one more round of breath. And then we'll do our funny quad stretch. Left hand shimmies its way down to the right foot. Let your left leg go straight, and you can just drop it bent right to the mat now as you drop your right knee down and out, or you can find the bind. Noticing a difference on the sides if there is one. For me, there definitely is. This side feels tighter, aka the right hip flexor / quad. And even on an exhale, maybe you find a release here. Can you go a little deeper? Can you pull your knee a little closer? If you're not quite at the point where you can grab your knee, but the foot on the ground isn't doing it for you, you can just lift it until you find that stretch. And you don't have to do the pull. Let's do one more round of breath. And either you stay here, if you want to find the supine twist with this, keep the bind, otherwise just bring your knees into your chest and drop them off to the right, or find your right hand to the outside of your left knee and pull it over to the right to find the cat-tail supine twist. Let's do 3 more rounds of breath here. Last round of breath. Slowly unwind everything. Let both knees and legs go straight back into the air, and now bend your knees in towards your armpits, finding happy baby pose and onto balasana, grabbing your feet, maybe rock it out a little bit. And then slowly I invite you to bring your legs, your knees together, and we'll make our way into Shavasana pose. So if you need to stretch it out on your mat a little bit, you can. Lying flat here. Maybe your hands are on your belly button, or one's on your heart and one's on your stomach. Maybe they're by your side. We'll take the last few moments of class here. If you want to get into the hips still yet a little more, you can find reclined butterfly pose by bringing the soles of your feet together. Just an option. Now let's reconnect with our intention for this practice or for the year. If you're watching this at New Year's, or even if you're not, maybe it's after New Year's, maybe it's a few months, a few weeks, and you can do a little check. What was your resolution and where are you at with it? I'm not necessarily big on resolutions myself just because it's a new year, but I do think taking pauses every now and then to reflect and to plan is needed at any point in the year. Studies show that about 25% of people stop following their New Year's resolutions within 2 to 3 weeks, which is maybe think about how can you work towards a goal in small steps every day. Right? Our goals are achieved little by little, not necessarily in great leaps. Sometimes yes, but it's not the usual sustainable way. So what are small daily actions that you can take towards a goal to making your life a little more balanced, which is the theme of these two flows that I'll be putting out near each other, the yin and the yang. Time for stillness and rest, and time for motion and action. Let's take 3 more rounds of breath here. Nice and slow and deep. Last round of breath. And now you can stay here. You can slowly start to wiggle and wake the body up. Maybe you roll up, maybe you come onto your side and then up. We'll all meet in a seat. And we'll close out practice with the second part of our pranayama. So if you remember, we plugged the right side of our nose. Now we'll plug the left. So I invite you to bring your thumb up. Plug the left side of your nose. Maybe your ring finger touches kind of your cheekbone, and maybe your index finger touches the middle of your head, forehead, your third eye space. And then close your mouth and breathe through that nostril. Couple more rounds. And release. Or here you can let your hands come back to your knees. Or maybe you slowly bring them to heart center as you observe the sensation. I thank you for sharing this practice with me, for letting me be a part of your yoga practice, of your goals, of your new year, or of your year, no matter what time it is. The light in me wishes the light in you the best in what is to come. Namaste.